Audio 21. Tunney's masterpiece.
Tunney is a sculptor. He has created great masterpieces. 1 year ago, he began to create his best sculpture. An elephant. With wings. Have you ever seen an elephant with wings? Has it sounded weird? For months, he wondered what the wings might look like on an elephant, because it's really hard to imagine a flying elephant. So, he imagined that the wings should be very long and strong, because an elephant can weigh more than 5,000 kilos, and he does not want to twist his imagination. So, he has tried many wings, and he still has not found any good. He has carved the whole body of the elephant. He has already built the ears, the tail, the elephant trunk, and its legs. He hasn't named the elephant yet, but people have often asked for a name. Many people have wondered why an elephant with wings, and in his definition, Tunney says, the elephant represents the weight of our challenges, the things we go through in life, and still show that we are bigger than our problems, and we can fly regardless of the weight we carry on, because we have strong and powerful wings.
Audio 22.
Will Mark buy a new car this year? Yes, he will. He will buy a sport one. Will your family move to a new flat in a month? No, they won't. Maybe they will next year. Will George go to the university next year? No, he won't. He's decided he will first travel to Europe. Will Sandra buy a new dress for the wedding? Yes, she will. Probably she will buy an expensive one again. Will your sister drive you to school tomorrow? No, she won't. My mother will. Will your mother make a cake for your birthday? Yes, she will. She won't buy a cake. Her cake is more delicious. Will your brother come from France on New Year's Day? No, he won't. But he will come on Christmas.
Audio 23. Cause and consequence.
If we had waited for a solution, we would have gained more time. If we had gained more time, we would have enjoyed better our trip. If we had enjoyed better our trip, we would have had more stories to tell. If we had had more stories to tell, we would have had more people to hear us. If we had had more people to hear us, we would have been more like our grandparents. If we had been more like our grandparents, we would have had more patience. If we had had more patience, we would have waited for a solution.
Audio 24. Gray Moon.
If I were a painter, I would paint the moon. If I painted the moon, I would look to the stars. If I looked to the stars, I would remember the sun. If I remembered the sun, I would not forget the earth. If I didn't forget the earth, I would take care of the nature. If I took care of the nature, we would have the trees. If we had the trees, I would not paint the moon.
Audio 25. The Stamp Machine.
Once, a very rich old man, owner of a large industrial machinery sales company, had no daughters, had no sons and had no wife. Because of his advanced age, he needed to let his company for someone he would trust, someone he would pass on his legacy. So, he called the only 3 nephews he had, and proposed to them a deal. "I'm an old man now," he said. "I have been serving people on selling machinery my whole life. I was the best salesperson on this area. People always appreciated my good service and my character. That's why I've become the owner and create this huge empire. But more than that, and most importantly, I've created a solid trust between the company and my customers. That is the real reason of my success. Unfortunately, I have no heirs. And it's time to think about the company's future after I've gone. I want to let my company in good hands. I need to let my company in the hands of a true salesman. You, my nephews, are my only family. So, here's the deal. I will give each one of you a stamping machine, and who returns after 3 days with the highest value will take over my company after I die. However, I need to inform you that all these 3 machines are defective. They are not good for selling. They need to be replaced in my store, but I won't do it. For the last, the old man said, remember, a man who can convince himself can convince everybody. Accepting the deal, his nephews left and rushed out to sell the machines. After 3 days, the 3 nephews came back in order to show the results for their uncle. The first nephew approached him and said, "Here you are, my dear uncle. I sold the stamping machine for more than 50% of its original value. How did you cover up the machine's defectives?" asked the old man. "Well, I said it was the best-selling stamping machine ever. Lots of people had bought it, and I just had bought one from your store. The customer accepted without questioning." The old man, inexpressive, looked at the second nephew waiting for his turn to talk. "Well, my dear uncle, I sold it for the double of its value," said his second nephew, totally excited. "How about the defects? How did you cover them up?" Again, the old man asked. "Well, first I just told the customer about the amazing functions of that machine. I even made up some functions which the machine doesn't really have. I said the machine was perfect, and I also had bought one from your store. The customer accepted my price without questioning." The third nephew looked to his uncle very ashamed and disappointed. "My dear uncle, I really admire you as the great seller that you always have been, but I am not a salesman. I could not convince myself for covering up the machine's defects. I didn't even try. I really cannot sell what I don't believe. I am really sorry, my uncle. I am not a true seller," said him totally frustrated for not accomplishing his task. The old man, with an expression of relief and watery eyes, looked to his other 2 nephews. "You both are standing in front of a genuine salesman," said him. "At any moment I have mentioned that you had to sell a defective machine for anyone. I just said who would come back with the highest value would take over of my company. Over this huge company that you can see now, in front of your eyes, it was built up based upon people's trust. That's the highest value I was expecting from you. You haven't sold the machines for those people by your own. My company has sold the machines for you, because people trust in the service. That's why they bought without questioning. People don't buy machines in my company. They buy trust. You have convinced and deceived 2 people, but you cannot convince and deceive everybody for too long. That's the bed where the trust lies, my nephews, conclude him. So, the old man, with a pride and happy face, looked to his 3rd nephew. You, my dear nephew, for your fine character, will take over of my company. You are the right person to carry on my work. You have convinced yourself to do the right thing, not the easy thing. You did today as I have been doing for all these years. I am sure you will do well for our customers after I have gone. And so I'll be fine too, said him with bright eyes of satisfaction. So, the old man gave to his nephew a lovely hug, full of pride and happiness, extending another generation the message of his wise father. Show the way to people's eyes, but always let their hearts find their treasure, because the eyes see, but the heart perceives.
Audio 26. The Highway Pathstones.
A drifter had been walking down on a dirt road for days, when from afar he sees a fork that looked like 2 different paths by the color of the ground seen from that distance. When he got at the fork, there was an old man with a very simple physiognomy, wearing an old straw hat, looking more like a peasant than someone from the city. He was sitting on a stone as if he were waiting for someone. The drifter looks at the old man and greets him, but before asking anything, the old man says, as if he had read the drifter's thoughts, "Choose well, because they are 2 very different paths." The drifter, taking quickly his eyes off the old man's direction, began to think about what he had just said. Hesitating to move on, he stares at him for a moment. "How do you know I'm lost?" "I may not be lost," said the drifter, questioning the old man's boldness. "I just want to know which road leads to the nearest city. I'm hungry and thirsty." Who knows his fate does not walk in the middle of the road. "You must choose one side of the way, my boy," said the old man with a faint smile on his face. "Okay, I confess that I don't know where I'm going to. And I do not know where I want to get. I just walk and try not to think about distance. It's more exhausting to think about it," said the drifter, still confused of what he had just heard. "There is nothing wrong with that. We must think of today. However, we should also know that each step is a tomorrow. You have 2 paths ahead, the path of the high stones and the path of the low stones. The path of the high stones. You will walk on a smooth surface like wood. You will have the view of the horizon, and will walk broadly and free for not fearing to fall. It brings peace and security," said the old man without taking the smile away from his eyes, still staring to the ground in a smooth and confident voice. "On the pathway of the low stones," continued him, "you will walk on a fickle surface, will not see the horizon, and will be constantly afraid of falling because this path has sharp and acute stones. It brings pain and teaching. These 2 paths very often approach and move away from each other, where you can be on one path or another without even notice it, because one assumes the characteristics of the other. And then back to being what they were. You will have to walk through this constant exchange and still be able to identify on which path you are. How can anyone walk like that? How will I know which way I am? Why do the paths exchange all the time? Asked the drifter, confused. Well, you will have to watch your steps out, because the stones of each path are different. One has sharp stones like razors, and the other polished stuck stones as if they were made for your feet. Sometimes, because the rough path of the low stones way, you will be too busy afraid to fall and won't even notice the horizon. These paths approach each other, and even they mix up, because that is the golden law which justifies the existence of everything. Change. Sometimes, by mistake or for being careless and not feeling the biting stone, you will take the path of the low stones, and there is nothing wrong with that. But come back as soon as possible to look for the high stones, because only them are solid and reliable, and you won't risk falling. Feel the stones quietly and take one more step. The drifter stopped for a moment, looking down and thinking about everything that weird and unknown man had just said. And in a great effort to understand, something suddenly snatched out his thought. I got it. I know what you mean, said him, fired up. No matter what path we take, if we want to find our destiny, we will have nothing to lose, because the two paths teach to get there. Even in the sharp stones we choose what is pain or what is teaching, but only on the high stones path we have peace and security, and into it we look at the horizon, don't we? Said him, still staring at the floor in an excitement of those who had discovered the answer to all things. But in the moment the drifter looks at the old man, there was no one in that place anymore. Then, with a serene smile in his eyes, and an immense joy that rose in the depths of his soul, because he had understood, the drifter just smiles and moves on. Now, glad and thankful for getting to know the two paths of his journey.
Audio 27. The Walnut Tree.
Once, there was a tribe that lived on the edge of a river, in the wilderness of a very distant place. The tribe was led by an old tribal chief, who also was the shaman of the village. In the village, there were many children, and one of the cheerful moments that the old chief appreciated the most was to sit under the sunset and watch the children playing and having fun. Near the river banks, there was a large walnut tree, where each autumn, children were delighted with the nuts that fell from the tree, and those who could catch them from the low branches enjoyed competing who would pick up more fruits. Every afternoon, the shaman chief wouldn't miss that moment for the world, because he rejoiced in the beauty of youth. And he knew that in a near future, he would have to choose someone from the tribe to pass on his teachings, so that the chosen one would become the tribal chief and the new shaman of the tribe. On a day of guiding ritual, the old shaman, through the intervention of his ancestor guides, was warned by the visit of a mountain eagle that his future disciple was already living in the village and would soon be revealed for him. Each year, the ground under the walnut tree was covered with walnuts that easily fell from the tree, and at the end of the fall season, only in the tallest branches. Some fruits still remained, but it was too risky to reach that height on the tip of the branches without risk of falling. One day, as usual, the old shaman watched from afar the children playing near the walnut tree, when suddenly one of the boys, being him the smallest of the group, started to climb the walnut tree, while the other kids looked astonished at the boy's courage and determination. So also was the old man, looking forward to seeing how high the boy's boldness would take him. The boy reached the top of the tree and, with an incredible ability, picked the nuts up and threw them down for the other kids that celebrated for still being able to delight the fruits, for if they had to wait for the wind to detach them from the branches, they would get too ripe and would dry. At that moment, the old man remembered the warning of his spiritual ancestors and kept his happiness in silence. In the following years, the scene repeated itself. The boy became a kind of leader of the group that always counted on his bravery to challenge the old walnut tree, bringing all the fruits that it had to offer. Over the years, the boy grew up, and along with him, strong and vigorous muscles burst up in his legs and arms for the continuous effort that he had performed over all those years. So, the shaman chief, following the tradition, would have to require a test in order to assure the chosen one would prove by his strength and courage before the tribe that he would deserve the honor of the calling. It was time to choose the new disciple. In the village tradition, a test of strength, courage and endurance would have to be faced, where 11 competitors selected by the tribe would have to carry a huge stone in their arms, running to the edge of an abyss, and throw it down on the cliff. Then they would cross the abyss by a fallen tree, used as a bridge. Crossing the abyss, they would go through a closed forest formation where wolves usually lived, and finally, would leave the forest going through the open field behind the village, thus returning to the starting point. Whoever came first would be the chosen one. And so, the competition started. The 11 selected rushed into the great challenge of their lives. Time goes by, and from afar towards the village, one of the competitors rises, having a huge advantage over the others. For if he ran alone toward the village, some of the selected ones did not have enough strength to carry the stone, some not get used to the risks of heights, got afraid to cross the abyss, and others, too tired, gave up face to the forest and the threat of the wolves. Everyone waited euphorically to greet the winner. In advance, the old chief, staring with joy in his eyes, recognized that it was the boy who climbed the walnut tree who was coming as the winner. And so, it was confirmed when the boy arrived in the village, and everyone greeted him as their future leader. At night, in the greeting ritual of the new disciple, the master brought to the boy a wolf tooth bracelet to place it on his stronger arm, symbolizing tribal union and the necklace made with claws and feathers of the mountain eagle, symbolizing the courage, the conquests and the high flights of a warrior. Master, this is the happiest day of my life, because I did not believe that I could win. I am not the bravest nor the strongest of the tribe," said the moved disciple to his master. "I already knew you would be a leader many years ago. Since the first time you climbed the walnut tree. My guardian ancestors warned me out that my disciple would be brave, courageous, and would take care of his loved ones. It's what you've shown for all these years, every time you've fed the kids by your calling as a leader," said the old chief, with proud words. "Over the years," continued the master, "and through the constant effort you've made, your arms burst into vigorous muscles, like a tiger. Your legs became agile and strong, even if you did not realize it. And most importantly of all, was your noble personality as a leader, by taking the responsibility in your hands, not waiting for the nuts fall from the tree. You had enough courage to come upon them in order to feed the kids. It strengthened your soul and physically turned you into a warrior. In truth, I tell you that I knew before the competition who would be the chosen one, and the chosen would be you." Thus, in the following years, the wise old man shared all his wisdom to the chosen one, fulfilling his mission. It was a rainy winter afternoon, lying down on his deathbed, staring tiredly at the man in front of him, and still seeing the same boy that used to play on sunset afternoons, where he gratefully watched from afar. The old man makes his last request to his disciple, who had become now, by his teachings, a strong, wise, and fearless leader. "Bury my body near the walnut tree, so that I can return to nature and become part of it. For if I will continue to see the kids playing around me, I will be alive in the fruits of the tree, in the eyes of the eagle, and in the depths of your heart." After the old shaman heard his disciple promise that he would take care of the walnut tree as one of his loved ones, he would honor the nature and the tribe traditions, and would grant his last request with all his heart. The old chief, with a serene smile that remained through the last brightness of his eyes, he slowly closes them, becoming now a guardian and part of the nature that created and fed his body, and now would fed his spirit.
Audio 28. The Barefoot Shoemaker.
Once, in a small town on the edge of a very cold and distant country, there was an old shoemaker, who was the only one in that place where people could fix their shoes and count on a service of excellence for the gift of creating tailor-made footwear for all tastes that the old shoemaker offered. The town attracted many visitors in its rigorous winter. for the mountains that surrounded it offered such a unique beauty that inspiringly evidenced the existence of a creative hand. The whole town was built with a view facing the remarkable mountains that fed the dazzled eyes of the locals by their exuberance and grandeur, showing an unrivaled spectacle at sunset, where the giant's top acquired a magenta shade when the last rays of sunlight struck its peaks, merging in perfect harmony with the white snowcap, which still remained from the last season, and the dark blue tone in its halves, where the sun's rays no longer reached them. At the entrance to the city, there was even a sign of greeting to tourists that said, "Welcome. God lives here." The old shoemaker, to his delight, every afternoon, received the kind visit of his sole and beloved grandson. For on the way back from school, the boy passed in front of the shoe store, and the proud grandfather always enjoyed hearing the grandson tell him how his day at school had been. Once, the boy got at the store with a sad glance and a little bit sulky for an 8-year-old child, and soon caught the attention of his grandfather. "Hey, my boy. You are thinking of something you should not think, aren't you?" asked him. "No, Grandpa. I'm okay. Just a little tired of school," said the boy. "Today we had science class, and the teacher said that we came from a cell, but I did not understand very well. And I no longer believe in such a stork that brought me to the world as Mom told me. I've always found it really weird. A stork delivering children to parents. The stork has lots of chicks to take care of, and there would be no time for humans," said the boy, disappointed. The old man had a good laugh, surprised by the boy's approach. "It seems like today you've discovered some very interesting stuff, my young man," he said, still grinning at the confused grandson in the new discovery, and at the same time enjoying the sheer ingenuity that only a child can demonstrate. "Where do we really come from, if it's not from a such stork, Grandpa?" asked the boy, wanting to understand everything at once. The old man, still smiling, paused for a moment to think how to formulate an answer that the boy would assimilate in a simple way, but it was not an easy task, and in his thoughts, he had already decided to give a traditional answer. A response that every child would accept without much hesitation. But as he was a shoemaker, he took a deep breath. "Well, my boy, the truth is that we don't know where we come from." The boy's eyes stared on his grandpa's face, and for an instant, the old man felt he should not have said that. Not that way. He could feel the boy's innocent thoughts blowing his mind. So, he thought it best to wait for a reaction. "How can we not know where we came from? That's not fair, is it? Everybody knows where they are going after school and work. They go home. That's where everybody comes from. How can we not know where we came from? Are you saying that humans have no home before the stork?" "Grandpa? Before the cell?" said the boy with a confused and puzzled countenance. "Well, my boy, there are things we do not need to understand for now. We just have to accept and wait." The old man waited for the boy to digest the information, already waiting for the obvious question that would surely follow. "All right. If we do not know where we came from, where do we go then?" the boy asked. For that question, the old shoemaker had the answer since a long time ago. Because time itself had already shown him and taught him many things about life that he understood and accepted. The old shoemaker was glad for being discussing that matter with the curious and young grandson. "My son, you just have to understand this. We all have 2 points in life. A starting point, that is when we come to the world, and a finishing point, which is when we leave this world when we die. Imagine that when we were born, we receive the sacred torch that is lit at the moment of our birth. The fire of this torch represents the essence of our life, what we are. Our mission is to take it from this first point to the second point. We will have to protect and take good care of our flame, because there will be days of wind and rain that will threaten to extinguish the sacred flame, but also days of calm and sun, where we will walk quietly along our way, enjoying the landscape. We will also find stones in this passage, where we must take care and divert. The interesting and most important thing about this journey is the fact you can choose how you want to walk the way. Whether you want to go barefoot or not, whether you want to wear or not good shoes that will protect you more comfortably, if you want to run or walk slowly. It's up to you to decide, because nobody has the right and cannot decide for you how you should tread your journey and what to wear on your feet. Your path is your path, and your main purpose is to reach the second point and deliver your sacred flame. The boy stood for a moment, staring admiringly and thoughtfully into his grandfather's eyes. "Grandpa, do all people have good shoes?" asked the boy now in an enthusiastic tone. "No. Unfortunately, not everyone has good shoes." "Why not?" "Because some people just accept the shoes that was given to them, without questioning it. In fact, sometimes not even is given any shoes to them. Once, my classmate cried because her shoes were hurting her foot." "And did she take off her shoes?" asked the shoemaker. "No, Grandpa. The teacher said that she could not be barefoot in the classroom, so she had to keep her shoes until the class was over." "Well, adults also go through it, my son, except that their shoes take on another form in their ways, like their oppressive jobs or their relationships that were supposed to free them, instead of to imprison them. Sometimes, they also live in tight shoes, because they believe those shoes are the only ones, and the right ones for them. They don't dare to take them off. They don't dare to change them." "That is sad, Grandpa. Do adults cry about it as my colleague?" "Yes, they cry, but they prefer not to show it. Sometimes they even know they can demand their shoes, and if they are not given, they can make their own," said the old man, staring deeply into the boy's eyes. "Really? Can people make their shoes?" asked the boy, fascinated by the assumption. "Yes, my grandson, every single person can. Although many do not know, or think they don't know. They are like barefoot shoemakers. And for those people who do not know yet, Grandpa, how is it?" "Well, that's the loveliest beauty of our journey, my boy. For people who have already learned how to make their own shoes, they can contribute their service by making them for those who do not have them yet, helping people to walk the path with more comfort and protection." The boy, in silence, stares at his grandfather's desk, full of shoes for repairing. "Grandpa, what's the best shoe for people?" asks the boy. "There is no best shoe, my son. The best shoe is the one that will suit in each person, and it is comfortable to walk with it," Sometimes it takes time to find or create ours, but if you look for it, inevitably, one day you will find it. And if you want to learn enough, one day, will be done," said the old man, with calmness and certainty. The boy's puzzled face, after listening carefully to his old grandpa, broke gently into a smile. He understood in his own way what his dear grandfather had told him. "Grandpa, could you teach me how to make shoes?" asked the boy. The old man, filled with emotion and satisfaction at the grandson's request, held him in his arms, giving him a love and rug. "Of course, my dear. You can learn how to make your own shoes. In fact, you've already started it." "How did I start, Grandpa? I did not make any shoe yet," said the boy euphorically. "No, my dear. You did not make any shoe. However, you did ask the right questions," said the old shoemaker, proud of his gorgeous grandson.